Story which is usually called The Wickedness of Morgan le Fey, because, of course, any woman who seeks power for herself must inevitably be wicked. Morgana is the half-sister of King Arthur, for they were born of the same mother. And she's a very powerful sorceress, and also a woman of great guile and cunning. It was one fine morning. Arthur and 2 of his knights were hunting in the forest, and they followed a white hart deep in through the woods until they were led to a lake which none of them recognised, for the waters were dark, the waters were deep, the lake was vast. And there on the lake was a boat, the like of which none of the knights had seen before. But of course they were curious, and of course they climbed aboard the beautifully crafted boat with its fine gilded prow, its beautiful silk sails. And as soon as their feet descended into the boat, she started to sail herself across the lake. And of course, there on the boat were maidens to tend to all 3 of the knights' every need, and to bring them well-cooked meat, to bring them fine wines served in beautiful goblets. And when the knights grew weary, each of them had a fine, soft bed in which to slumber their deep, enchanted sleep. When King Uriens, the husband of Morgan le Fey, awoke, he found himself no longer on the boat, but lying in his own bed next to the sleeping form of his wife. When Sir Accolon, Morgan le Fey's lover, awoke, he found himself lying next to a well, so had he rolled one way, he would have fallen down into the deep, dark waters of the well. As he rolled the other way, he found himself lying on the firm, supportive earth. King Arthur awoke to find himself in a deep, dark dungeon, filled with the groans of chained knights. The story they told Arthur was that they had been there for some time, prisoners of Sir Dana, a dark, mischievous knight, whose argument with his own brother Sir Outlake as to who truly owned the castle and who truly owned the land had led him to seek a champion who would fight. But none of the knights would agree to fight for Sir Dana, which is why they were kept imprisoned there. A maiden came into the dungeon and told to Arthur that if he would agree to be Sir Dana's champion, if he would agree to fight on Sir Dana's behalf, then not only would Arthur be freed, but so would all the other knights. So Arthur had no choice but to agree to fight for the Dark Knight, Sir Dana. So he was led from the dungeon out onto the field, where his armour was laid out ready for him. His sword, Excalibur, lay there on the ground next to her own richly jewelled scabbard, and yet When Arthur's fingers wrapped around Excalibur's hilt, there was none of the magical tingle that he usually felt when he grasped his sword. When he buckled his scabbard to his side, there was something missing, for of course it is the scabbard of Excalibur that is of more value than the sword. For the scabbard will prevent whoever wears it from bleeding. The two knights began to fight. And they fought well, and they fought bravely, and they fought for a very long time. The sun had climbed high in the sky. By the time Arthur realized that none of his blows were making his opponent bleed, and yet he felt the unaccustomed feeling of blood draining from him as each of his opponent's cuts went home. Weak from loss of blood and exhausted, Arthur fell and found himself staring up at his opponent, who said, "Do you yield?" And Arthur pulled off his helmet and said, "I am Arthur Pendragon. I am king of the Britons. I yield to no man. I will fight to the death." And the other knight pulled off his helmet, revealing the well-known face of Sir Accolon, for he too had been tricked into fighting his king. And as Arthur looked at the familiar knight, he saw something more familiar, the scabbard of Excalibur and the sword herself. So with the last of his strength, Arthur used his sword to knock the true Excalibur from Sir Accolon's hand. And as soon as he wrapped his fingers around Excalibur's hilt, he felt energy and life returning to him. But Sir Outlake, for he was a good man, said to the two combating knights, "This is enough. My brother and I will settle our dispute by peaceful means. The time has come for both of you to go to the nunnery, where they will tend your wounds. For by this time, Sir Accolon was bleeding deeply too." Four days later, Accolon died of his wounds, and Arthur, who realized who it was who was behind this terrible plot, said, "Take the body of Accolon to my half-sister Morgan le Fey, and let her know that I still live." But that took some time, and Morgana, of course, believed that Arthur would have been killed by her lover as he wielded the true Excalibur. So now, all that was left for Morgana was to kill her own husband. She sent for her handmaid and said, "Bring me my husband's sword, for the time has come for me to kill him, so that I may marry Sir Accolon, and together we will rule the fair realm of Albion." But the handmaid was a woman of virtue and honour, and instead of going to Urien's chamber to fetch his sword, she went and spoke to Morgan le Fey's son, Urien, and told him what his mother planned to do. So Urien, being a man of considerable honour himself, found his father's sword and confronted his mother with it. He extracted from Morgan le Fey a binding vow that she would never, ever try to kill her husband, King Uriens. When Sir Aconan's body and the news that Arthur still lived arrived, Morgan le Fey knew that she had one last card to play. She gathered her knights, and together they rode to the nunnery. And whether by sorcery or whether by cunning, Morgana managed to convince the abbess to let her visit her sleeping brother. So she took the scabbard of Excalibur, the scabbard without which Arthur could bleed, and Morgana and her knights rode off deep into the forest. And she doesn't appear again in the story until the very last hours, when, defeated after his last battle, Arthur is tended by his half-sister. Or perhaps she is the woman who takes him to the realm of Avalon, where Arthur lies sleeping, so we can call on him in our darkest hour of need. So if anybody knows how to do that, can they please let me know, either in the comments below, or if you'd like to find me on Twitter, I'm there under my own name. I'm simply Fiona Dowson. I have lots of other stories on YouTube. If you'd like to subscribe to my channel, you'll find them. Meanwhile, stay strong, hang on to your own Excalibur, and walk your own path of loyalty and honour. It's been my pleasure to tell for you. Blessings to all of you.